All right, let's get going. It's almost 12:01, so here we go. So I just came out of a really good couples therapy session, and I was thinking about like why did it feel so satisfying? What was so good about it? And what I came up with was we were both able to practice really good empathy. And then I was thinking, well, what exactly is empathy and why does it feel so good? And in some ways, it's sort of synonymous, I think, with mindfulness, meaning I think in order to be truly empathetic, there's a foundational piece of mindfulness in there. And I thought, let's spend a few minutes exploring that. So first question, what um well, I think empathy involves it requires being fully present, in this case, for another person or what is alive for them, right? They're having a certain experience, be it cognitive, emotional, whatever it might be. But in this moment, they're having an experience, and I'm able to bear witness to that or be present for it. And so what that means is that I'm checking my preconceived ideas or concepts or explanations or whatever it might be. I'm leaving that at the door and I'm giving them my full attention so that I can really bear witness to what's going on for them. And I'm parking my own experiences for the moment. It's a wonderful experience to be on the receiving end of. It's also a really wonderful experience to give to someone. And so the question is, why is it so hard sometimes when we can't do it? So I'll call these empathy blockers. And one of the things I want to point out is oftentimes we get derailed from our capacity for empathy is when someone is recounting a story or telling us something that happened or saying, hey, and then you said this and then you did that. And we're fundamentally disagreeing with the facts, right? Like they're telling one story, I remember it a different way. And before I know it, I've lost the ability to just stay with their story, whether I agree with it or not. So there's this correcting mentality that can block me from doing that. Explaining and justifying is another one, right? As they're expressing or describing something, my mind is jumping in and is saying, yeah, yeah, but hold on a sec. That yeah, the reason I said that or the reason I did that is because blah, blah, blah. I'm out of empathy again, right? So I'm losing it. Advice giving is another favorite one. Well, what you should have done is just, fill in the blank. Again, I've left the focus, from being on them to now, moving to something else, which also brings me to sympathy and storytelling. So sympathy is different from empathy because sympathy has to do with we piggyback on top of what someone else is expressing to us. We kind of hijack it and then tell them a story where the intention is it's a story about ourselves, and the intention is to connect with them and say, I see you, I know what it was like, when my dog died, this is what it was like for me. And but in essence what I'm doing is I'm sort of hijacking the fact that you're having a really hard time with the fact that your pet just died or something happened, and instead I'm now focusing on my experience. And so that's sympathy, right? So the bottom line is anything that shifts us away from just being purely focused on the other person has moved us out of empathy. So I thought let's spend a few moments reflecting on how that shows up in our life or has shown up in our life. And some of these may land and some of them may not. So and just see see what happens with it. Let's start by closing our eyes and let's begin with the present moment, right here, right now, sitting, eyes closed. If you can open the mind, be curious, open the heart. Just for a few moments, we're going to explore and see what comes up, and just trusting that whatever our is on our to-do list, it'll still be there in 10 minutes from now. See if we can just really follow through on the intention of let's see what happens in the next few moments if we really try to drop into this empathy reflection. So if you can, using your memory, up into a recent situation that you might label as sort of a conflict situation, or there's some kind of a disagreement. Nothing too intense, but at the same time, something with a charge. Someone that's reasonably important to you. So there's weight, or there's a sting to this disagreement and conflict. Let's see if you can drop back into being in that situation. You're arguing, words are being exchanged. Let's explore this first empathy blocker that has to do with correcting the facts. So see if you can notice if there's any part of you during this exchange that has this strong desire to speak up and say, that's not what happened. It's not what I did. You didn't do that. Notice how when our mind drops into this sort of correcting the facts mode, we're no longer present with the pain or the frustration or the experience that this other person is having in that moment. We might physically still be there, but we're no longer in empathy when we're trying to correct. So just imagine yourself just taking in that they believe that what happened is what they're describing. They don't need to correct it. We don't need to agree with it either, but we can just allow them to have their experience in this moment, their recollection of the facts. Notice any resistance to that. Notice if there's in this altercation with this other person, is any part of you that felt the strong urge to explain yourself or justify? And I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't at some point explain or justify, but see if you can just notice how trying to do so in this moment as they're having their experience and they're expressing themselves, that runs counter to the idea of really being present for their experience, really being in empathy with them. And again, this is a kind of energetic sensing here. It's really staying with the memory, and just noticing to what extent, if at all, any of these things I'm pointing out are resonating or are ring true for you. So you're trying to correct the facts or the statements they're making. Is there any part of you that wants to explain or justify why you did what you did and why what they did was a problem? Is there a part of you that wants to give them advice? Maybe if you expressed yourself differently, or maybe if you approached things this way or that way. And again, just noticing how that takes you out of the experience of being just simply and purely mindful and present to what they're expressing and experiencing. And then there's also sympathy and storytelling as they are quote unquote coming at you or they're expressing themselves. Is there a part of you that is or wants to divert the attention where you're dropping into telling stories or recounting experiences that you had that may run counter to what they're trying to point out or again, just noticing the shift in energy. When we do that, it's understandable, but it also moves us out of the empathetic zone. It shifts our energy away from them to something else, usually ourselves. And what would it take to keep the energy over there with them? Just for a moment, just to allow them to feel seen and heard, validated. So our ability to stay present is really central to our ability to be empathetic as well. We have to be able and willing to stay in the moment with what the other person is experiencing and expressing. Go ahead and take a deep breath in through the nose. Long, slow exhale. You can even shake out your hands, letting go of the memory or any residual energy that that memory is leaving. Hold the out breath. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Another deep inhalation through the nose. Slow exhale through the mouth, relaxing the jaw, the throat, the shoulders, chest, the belly. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, open your eyes. Hope that's a good way to start off the week. Empathy, I think, is its own reward at the end of the day. At least in my experience, it feels amazing when I'm able to give someone else empathy. And I also know that it's really hard. The good news is this is like a classic positivity practice. We just got to practice it and just do it over and over again. So hope that was helpful and see you all tomorrow. Be well, everyone.